Welcome to talkSPORT USA with myself, Kerrie Jacobs-Bryant. I am joined by none other than Latrelle Yancey, a visual storyteller, videographer, photographer, creative director, content creator, whatever you name it, he can do it. And he does it all through the founder of 2 Live Media. And also, he just so happens to be the personal photographer of Bam Adebayo from the Miami Heat. How you doing, Latrelle? You good?
I'm doing good, Kerrie. It's a pleasure being here, man. I'm excited. Been waiting on the day, man. So we've got everything in order, and I'm ready to go.
Bam Adebayo has been a hot topic of conversation for, around the NBA for the last few weeks, especially after he dropped 83 points. Yes, 83 points on the Washington Wizards, surpassing that of none other than the late, great Kobe Bryant, who got 81 points against the Toronto Raptors in 2006. So having written his way into the history books, he now sits behind only Wilt Chamberlain, who scored 100 points back in 1962. But the difference is that's not on tape. This has been caught in 4K. So, in the digital landscape that we live in today, everything is recorded and posted on social media, whether that be through the highlights like Bam's night or the lowlights, which, often is seen on Shaq Tinnerfall or something. And for some individuals, their full-time careers center around capturing these moments for us to remember forever. So Bam Adebayo's performance will undoubtedly go down into Heat lore forever. And Latrelle here is the man responsible for capturing, firsthand the career-defining moment of Bam and, one of the most magical moments in history. So I guess we have to start with how we got here. So would you be able to, tell me a bit how you came to be in this job? Obviously, you're from St. Louis, and I see you're repping them today. And
Oh,
just, how you are now based in South Beach, and talk us through the journey of getting into shooting athletes and, to this moment.
okay. Thanks again, Kerrie. Again, a historical moment. It's kind of surreal to be here and be a part of that. I never would have thought in 2026. But to make a long story short, this thing started in 2018 with myself starting a business. I had a vision of becoming really a videographer, a cinematographer, wanted to do documentaries. And to be honest with you, it really started with my daughter playing college basketball at the University of Tulsa. She came out in an era where commitment videos were like the huge thing on social media. So on the way back from her official visit from the University of Tulsa, she told me she wanted to commit, but she wanted to find someone to buy her, or I'm sorry, to pay for her to do a commitment video. Well, I convinced her that, we don't have to pay anybody. I was like, I can kind of do it myself, even though I had never done it before. I promise I had this vision listening to this song by Post Malone. It's called Congratulations. And I just had this vision of her doing this video to that song. So I just taught myself how to use iMovie on the iPhone, and we did her commitment video. And it turned out really well. And it just kind of sparked that, okay, I found a way to kind of get my ideas out on a social platform. So I just ran with it. I taught myself as much as I could teach myself. YouTube University. I was asking questions. I was doing projects every other day. I was just getting practice and getting reps. And to make a long story short, it landed me in opportunities that and doors that I never thought that it would lead me to. So fast forward a few years later, a big friend of mine, John Lewis, had an event in South Beach, Miami, and he asked me. He said, "Hey, man, can you come and get some content for me?" And I was just like, "Yeah, for sure." Like, you don't even have to ask twice. And I flew down to Miami and I did a huge event for him. And I followed him around for 3 days and I gave him all this content. And I was doing all video. I wasn't even doing pictures. I was just doing video. If I did pictures, to be honest with you, I was doing a lot of pictures with my iPhone. I just kind of had an eye, but I was using my iPhone. But I did a videography. I did an event for him creating content. So fast forward about that third day, we were getting ready to leave, and I was heading back to St. Louis. He had a relationship with Kevin Graves, who was the manager of Bam Adebayo. That last day, we had lunch. Um, we started talking. He started sharing a vision with me about some future documentary stuff that he wanted to do with Bam, along with the team, the Carolina Diamonds, that he started back in North Carolina. I started telling him some of my dreams and visions, and we both sensed the passion that we both had for the ideas that we wanted to pursue. I'm sorry, to pursue in the future, and we just kept in touch. we kept in touch and just kept texting. And every now and then I would fly out and do small projects with Kev. And I want to say maybe a year or so after that, my phone rang while I was at work. I had just got hired by a job in St. Louis as the videographer in the marketing department at Keeley Companies. And I saw my phone ring, and it was Kevin, and he was like, "Hey, Latrelle, I got something to tell you." And I'm like, "What's going on?" He said, "Bam's looking for a videographer and a photographer, and you're the first person I thought about, but you'd have to move to Miami." And I was like, when do you need me there? Like and he said, and I told him, I said, "Can you give me a couple of weeks to get some things in order at home and talk it over with the family and obviously talk to my previous job." And it was just really, honestly, Kerry, it's one of those right place, right times. And that was the short version of everything, but right place, right time. And Kevin, they called me and I drove from St. Louis to Miami, and the rest is history.
That is an insane story. So if we go to the game itself, obviously you've been shooting Baron for a couple of years now. When did you realize, against the Washington Wizards, that he could be in for a very special night? I know he ended the first quarter, 31 points. That was a heat record. There's just heat records continue to keep tumbling. Obviously, even when he did get that 31-point first quarter, is there any way you could have envisioned he would go on to, get the second greatest scoring game in history?
Kerry, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm so used to watching Bam through the lens now that I just, at the end of the day, I try to capture moments. I can kind of feel when moments are coming. Um, but I remember looking up after it was all said and done, and I was like, no way that this dude has 31 in the first quarter. Like, I was like, oh yeah, he came to hoop tonight. I was like, so in my brain, honestly, I'm thinking, okay, good game. He'll probably get about 40, 50. We'll get a win, obviously. And, I assumed that he was going to get a career high just based off the record that he has set in the first quarter. So I honestly, I didn't know what was to come in the future, but I knew he was on pace to set some kind of record, even if it was just some personal individual things. I think he was on pace for something.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, knowing that he was going to get a career high anyway, probably the way he was going. Did any concerns arise on your end in terms of ensuring you had the battery to capture all the content you needed? And this is quite a big deal, like for him to post on his socials after as well, in terms of like the pictures that encapsulate the moments. It, especially a historic one like this, it must have made you feel a little bit nervous.
Oh yeah. One of the things I try to do prior leading up to the game is I get to the arena early enough because I arrive with Bam. I get to the arena early enough to kind of make sure that I do have batteries and memory cards and all the things that a photographer should have when you're going into a game. So I felt like from that aspect of it, I was okay. I had I was prepared for that moment. But once he started getting 31, I was kind of like thinking to myself, oh, should I go get my other camera and start doing video as well, or okay, let me go get my meta glasses and start, shooting some things, from a POV perspective. So I started thinking about all this different stuff. So I had all this stuff in my pockets, what I mean? I had my cameras ready. And again, whatever moment that he was set up for, I just wanted to make sure that I was ready for it.
Yeah, for sure. So, in the terms of the closing moments, obviously you said, LeBron's 61 point scoring record was broken with a dunk. Um, when he edged closer towards that 80-point mark, obviously we haven't seen anyone score 80 points since Kobe and Will, but no one saw that. But in terms of like, we've seen 70 from Luca, we've seen 70 from Devin Booker, I think a couple of seasons ago. But did you think, is he going to achieve the impossible here? Like, did you feel more pressure in those moments in terms of getting the 82 and the 83-point free throws? You know what I mean?
So here's the crazy thing. Again, after the first quarter, I was like, oh man, he had a monster quarter. I'm like, since I've been working for him, I haven't seen him go off like that. So I was like, okay, that was a good first quarter. He balled out. I'm like, let's do it. And I kind of saw this look in his eye. Like I said, I've seen Bam throughout the entire time that I've worked for him. I can kind of tell in his mannerisms, when something is clicked or when he's ready to go or when he's got an extra boost in his step. And so I kind of saw that again after that first quarter. Second quarter, he came and he kind of started doing the same thing, kind of picking up where he left off. So at halftime, I think he was in his 40s. I'm like, wow, like he's definitely having a career night. And as I was walking back to the media room, one of the media staff members was telling me, he said, "Hey man, I don't know if Bam knows this, but if he gets 62, he can break LeBron's franchise record." And then me, I'm like, you know what? I know I'm not gonna text him. I'm not gonna do anything. I'm sure he's superstitious. I'm a little superstitious. I'm not telling him anything because I don't want him to think about it. I don't want to throw him off. So I just, in my back of my mind, I was like thinking to myself, honestly, he's got a chance to break LeBron's franchise record. And then just to think back a couple of games ago, he had just hit 10,000. So he had passed up Udonis Haslam with the 10,000 career. So I was like, oh man, he's, we celebrated that. Now he has an opportunity to also beat LeBron's franchise record. So that was what was going on in my brain. And so again, I'm making sure everything's charged up. I'm saying to myself, yeah, he's got a shot. If he comes out in the third quarter and he does what he needs to do, I'm like, he's got a shot at setting another record tonight. So the closer it got to it, I think you're right. It did kind of hit me, not from I didn't think he was going to get it, but it was a nervousness like, I don't want to miss the shot. I don't want to miss the moment. And so that was playing in the back of my mind. So obviously, I kept looking at my camera, trying to make sure everything was focused. I'm looking at my phone and my battery. I'm looking at everything just to try to make sure that I've got just enough, or I've got enough charge on everything so I don't miss the moment. And so I think the most nerve-wracking thing was I just kept saying to myself, like, do I want to capture video? Okay, let me try to capture video with my phone and my metas, and then I'll capture pictures with my camera. Because one of the things I do know about working for Bam is Bam loves pictures, meaning that those are things that he cherishes. Be able to, whether it's hang up in his house, whether it's put on his phone. I think he's one of those guys that really loves to like have that moment in a bottle. And a lot of people have videos of them and everything, but to be able to capture that moment on picture, I think that's the one thing that was going on in my mind. I'm like, no, he loves pictures, and I would hate to capture that moment, but then it not being focused, or somebody's in the way, or somebody's hand because they were cheering. So I tried to position myself to be in a place where I can be able to capture that moment. Because I knew at the end of the day, this was going to be important to him if he breaks this record. And the closer it got, the more realistic it became. And I just wanted to be at least one of those people that was able to get that shot when he broke the records.
No, exactly. Obviously, there was only I think it was just above 10,000 people in the arena. Um, could you give us like an insight to, how it felt in the Kaseya Center as he was, getting, so obviously he broke the first quarter scoring record. He broke, it was just so many records he got in one day. But the fans, obviously, they would have sent something after that first quarter as well. And the Kaseya Center must have just been getting madder and madder. Could you give like any insight into that kind of atmosphere?
Listen, let me tell you something. That I was with Bam when we went on the finals run in 2023, and trust
Hmm.
me, each game that we played leading up to the finals was electrifying. I think one of the most exciting things for me was watching the reaction of everybody who was cheering him on, from his teammates to his coach to the staff to everybody in the arena that personally knows Bam, to being able to get a glimpse of his mom standing up and watching her excitement. I don't know if there's a feeling that I can express to where everybody wanted to see him succeed. A lot of people wanted to see him break this record because it became realistic after a while. It became, okay, he broke LeBron's. Oh my goodness, man, he's got a chance. And then you started hearing the buzz around. I mean, everybody's whispering, man, he can get Kobe's record. He can break 81. So we're in the back and we're just following this thing play by play and hoping that he makes every shot that he throws up, you know what I mean, that he shoots. And every free throw, we're like, please make it, because at the end of the day, everybody that's there wants to be a part of history, wants to be able to say, I was there when Bam scored 83 points. And this was the most random game. Nobody thought that, playing against the Wizards on March 10th, that this was going to be an historical night. So I feel bad for the ones that weren't able to make it, but for the ones that were actually in the building, um, it was a sense of nervousness. It was a sense of, you want them to accomplish this. It was a sense of, I can't wait till he hits it because I'm going to say that I was there to experience history. So that was just a pivotal moment. It was historical, man. It was a feeling that I'm glad I was able to be a part of it. Because again, who would have thought 3 4 years ago that I would have been there in that moment, capturing the time and the picture that Bam scored 62 to beat LeBron and then 83 to beat Kobe.
No, exactly. And then obviously as a very close friend of Bam now, having seen your relationship grow since you started working with him, were you at any point, kind of worried that coach Eric Spoelstra would take him out of the game, or did you always know that Spo, obviously we saw him speak in, pre-game of the following game against the Bucks, that he apologizes to absolutely no one. Um how did that make you feel? Having, obviously not knowing the coaching staff is kind of what they were gonna do.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. Watching Spo's relationship with Bam, I think the thing that people don't realize is that Spo understands that Bam sacrifices so much for the team. He gives so much to the community. He gives so much to the Heat organization. I think Spo was excited to see him accomplish that record. For a second, maybe in the back of our minds, we probably thought after he broke LeBron's, maybe that was going to be the end of the day. Maybe he would have called it a day. But at the end of the day, they still had a basketball game to play and win. And I just think on top of that, Bam was just having a phenomenal game. And I think it shows you what type of person Spo is and what he believes in with his players. And it was just, at the end of the day, yeah, Bam scored 83 points. But what better way to go out than to say, hey, I coached the guy who scored 83 points in the game on March 10th, 2026. But I think he definitely felt that energy in the crowd as well. I think Bam was feeling it, and not just the record part of it, but Bam was having an awesome game. A lot of people, talk about the last 5 minutes, but Bam was already having a heck of a game. And I just think Spo did what Spo does, man. He looks out for his team and his players, and he did what he felt was right. And because of that, he was able to be a part of history as well.
Yeah, exactly. In terms of like your photography itself, then, so we've seen over the years some of the greatest NBA photographers. For me, it springs to mind, the likes of Andrew Bernstein with the Lakers, and Nat Butler as well. But do you have any sporting icons, whether that be actual sporting icons or people behind the cameras that you don't necessarily see? And is there any chance that you maybe like take influence from those kind of photographers going into how you photograph, Bam?
So the crazy part about it is I became a photographer late. I was really into videography. So I know the cliche thing to say is to name a few famous people that have shot for Sports Illustrated and shot for the NBA. And although I've paid attention to those photographers, and much respect to everybody that's out there, but to be honest with you, I was kind of influenced by a lot of people that were on social media. There are some awesome photographers and videographers that have been able to express and show their creativity through social media platforms. And I spend days sometimes just scrolling through Instagram and being like, wow, like this person is, man, he's got a great portfolio, or this person has great pictures or video. And even local photographers from the St. Louis area that I grew up watching, those people, they're great photographers as well. They may not have a nationwide platform, or they may not have been on Sports Illustrated cover yet or something like that, but their skill set is unbelievable. And I think that's what motivates me to keep getting better every time I go and take a shot. I'm my worst critic. I'm my worst critic, and I'm always trying to look for the ways for me to get better. So to answer your question, I'm influenced by a lot of people that are out there in social media. There's some great sports photographers out there, and I just continue to do my research and try to get better at my craft, and hopefully one day somebody can say that I'm an inspiration to them.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of the images you captured that night, is there a couple in particular, that stand out to yourself? As a photographer myself, I know, you go through thousands and thousands of pictures,
Mhm.
in a game, and then you've got to whittle them down. But is there any a couple that stand out, that really encapsulated those moments? And could you describe what you maybe sought to capture in those moments to give the feelings back to Bam? Obviously, I know he said in his post game interview, he said something like he wished he could remember it twice.
Mhm.
So yeah, if you could explain that, would be great.
I think there's several. It's kind of hard to pick just one because it was such a pivotal moment. But a few that stand out to me is number one is him getting the dunk right before right the dunk that he broke LeBron's record. The funny thing about that is me and another photographer was standing in the back on the podium, and we were just talking about just speaking it into existence. And I said, man, what would be dope is if he hit this free throw, he only needs 2 more points. So I'm like, we're just back to talking, and I'm like, man, what'd be dope though is if he got a dunk to break that record. So there was a play right before that he almost got a breakaway steal in a fast break, but the referee blew the whistle. I thought at that moment I was like that was it. I was like that was the moment that I was visually thinking about in my brain. And it was like literally like seconds after that it happened again. They got the steal, he got the fast break, and I promise in my brain and my body I just kept saying make sure I'm focused on Bam so that I can get the clean shot. And when it happened and I looked at my camera and I saw that everything was clear before I even touched it on the edits, I was like, I got it. I was like, that was the vision in my brain that I had about Bam getting that record and getting that dunk. So that was one of them. The other one was just watching his being in the right place and moment where his team came and doused him with all the water. I mean, the energy that I felt from them is just there's nothing like being a part of an organization and a team who wants to see you succeed. And the one thing about Bam is that he'll be able to go back and see how his teammates embraced him and embraced that record for him. They were so happy for him. So to be able to capture that moment where they doused the water on him hugging Spo, unbelievable. Again, just being able to capture that big smile on Spo's face and watching, what I'm saying, Bam break that record. And then obviously him hugging his loved ones. I think Bam, well, people that don't know about Bam is that he's just such a humble guy, such a family oriented guy. He's one of those guys that want to see other people succeed. And I know it sounds like you've heard it before, but I'm with him so much. And what you see is really what you get. It's not an act. He wants people to do well. He wants people to gravitate. He wants people to progress. And that was genuine. Those tears that I haven't seen Bam cry a bunch of times. And to see him shed tears when he hugged his loved ones and his mom and his significant other and his manager, like that was just to me, that was a moment. As much as I wanted to look and stare and dap him up and tell him congratulations as well, I think in my brain I was like, get this, because obviously everybody is going to have different shots at different angles, but those pictures don't say enough about the way he feels about his family and his loved ones. And so those moments in that game, that was what was important to me, was just him just taking it all in, and him just being able to say, hey man, wow, I did it. And everybody was here in Miami to celebrate with me. So those were moments that I'll remember for the rest of my life.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, you've worked with him a long time. You know exactly what he's like behind the scenes. But did you always know that he, or have the belief that he would perhaps pull out a performance like that one day in his career?
Mm. I'll be honest. Every time I'm with Bam, the one thing that he talks about more than anything, he talks about winning the championship. I think he's had a lot of historical moments, a lot of accolades, all stars, gold medals in the Olympics. But I think more than anything, he wants to win a championship. And it's not to take away anything that he did individually, but I don't think Bam goes into a game thinking of what he can do individually. I think Bam goes into a game thinking of what he can do to help the team. And I think that 83 game moment was just an opportunity for his team to give that back to him, because he sacrifices a lot for the Miami Heat, and everybody that knows basketball recognizes that he does it all. He's a great teammate. He's a great captain. He is a great defender, and that's another thing. Bam is one of those dudes that don't like to miss games, and it shows. It shows in his work ethic. It shows when I'm with him and we go work out, and he works out 4 times a day in the summer, and those are the things that people don't see. And he does that because he loves the game of basketball, but he also wants to do everything that he can to help the team. So I don't think the individual record is something that I could have saw coming, because he's such an unselfish player. You know what I mean? And teams are, the Miami Heat, they're lucky to have a guy like that, because he thinks team first and then he thinks me second. So I don't know if I could honestly say that I saw this 83 game, 83 points, happen in a game, because I've never seen Bam intentionally say, I'm just going to take all these different shots for no reason. Because sometimes he'll go in the game and he'll take a few shots, and he'll probably take less shots sometimes, just because that's the flow of the game. And he doesn't mind that, I think, as long as he wins. But I've more than anything, I know Bam wants to win a championship for Miami.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, we saw a lot in the aftermath. People were hating on the way he got it because it was like the Washington
Mm,
Wizards, who might or may not be tanking, for
mm,
next year's draft. And then we saw Coach Spo speak out in defense of him, Bam speaking in defense of himself, which he really shouldn't have to because he doesn't need to
mm,
justify. You can only do what's in front of you, right?
right.
What would you say to people that criticized Bam for how he made history?
Mm. When you Google Bam Adebayo's name, you're gonna see Wilt, Bam, Kobe. We can have all these different arguments about how he did this and this, that, and the other. Every point counts. And what people don't realize, again, is the man had 31 points in the first quarter. Everybody wants to critique the last 5 minutes. Uh, this man played 42 minutes. He only made two free throws in the first quarter out of the 31 points. He also had to play defense. I don't think people understand how hard it is. It's a professional league. Why are we worried about so many people that can just jump on and give their opinions anywhere, when some of the greats have commended him for his 83-point game effort? And of course, for me, it's a little bit more personal because I watch his sacrifice. Like I said, we in the summertime when he works out, we're up at 5 o'clock in the morning. We're out the door by 5:15 a.m. It's still dark when we pull out the driveway. We're in that gym. I'm watching him put blood, sweat, and tears and put all that equity into his game. And if it was that easy, every time a team would play the Wizards would get 80 points. And so I
Yeah.
always say, at the end of the day, we can say whatever we want to say. At this point, it doesn't matter, because the NBA recognizes Bam as being the second person on that list with points scored in a game. And to be honest with you, some of the arguments aren't even worth having, because you know numbers don't lie. And at the end of the day, he's got 83 of them.
Yeah, well, exactly. I know that Bam, after his game, he spoke very highly of his significant other, Asia Wilson, who's a WNBA superstar in her own rights. Four-time
Mm.
MVP, no one's ever got that before. Three-time WNBA champion. And he was like saying how she's very much a very big factor in his life and a key motivator of his to keep going. So, having been around him for the last few years, what have you seen from him as he's gone from, being a college player at Kentucky to becoming this, perennial all-star caliber player and, the superstar of this modern day Miami Heat team, which has had a lot of legends play for them in the past.
I think the biggest thing is you can just see it in his game of who he surrounds himself with. His circle of people is very strategic. It's very purposeful. I mean, he doesn't spend a lot of time doing other things outside of just being around his family. He thinks basketball, he thinks about his family, and then he has his free time where he goes out and we play dominoes. That's a big thing with Bam. We'll play dominoes every day, all day. But his support system is crazy. His mom and everybody else that are around him. And obviously, it's not to take away from any people that have been his family, or any people that are part of his family and his friends, whether they be here in North Carolina, they're all over. I just think that what helps him out and helps keep him grounded is the fact that the company that he keeps, because he's an old soul. He has a lot of older people around him. Obviously, myself and the manager and the chef and his mom and, some of his friends, and his mentors and UD. And it's just that I just look at him, and he's rare. And he's got some people around him that are one of one. And I think that helps him out, helps keep him grounded, and helps keep him hungry and motivated.
Yeah, for sure. So based on this performance, where would you put, 83 points? It's hard to really, even now, I can't even believe this has happened. But where would you put that alongside, the great Miami Heat legends? So D Wade, Dwayne Wade, for example, LeBron James, Alonzo Mourning, and the list goes on really. But where would you rank him now in terms of Heat legends?
I mean, for personally, for me, I rank him up there with the greats. Obviously, he's striving for a championship and his career is not over, so I can't compare him to what's already been done. But in regards of what he's done and what he's meant to Miami and what he's meant to the community, I've got to rank him up there with the greats. I think he's going to be a guy at one point that's going to have a statue. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to have his jersey retired, and I also think he's going to be a guy that's going to be a Hall of Famer. Again, when his career is over and done, he's going to be one of those guys that you mentioned. And that's not to say that he won't ever get his championship because he's going to continue to strive for it. And I just think for him, that's just going to be the icing on the cake. But you got to rank him up there with the greats.
Yeah, absolutely. And then my final question is where would you rank the moment, 82, 83 points, obviously free throws before he was finally taken out of the game to a standing ovation. But where would you put that in terms of iconic Heat moments? For me, it's like Ray Allen's 3-pointer against the San
Mhm.
Antonio Spurs in game 6. You've got Jimmy Butler in the 2020 finals in the bubble.
Mhm.
Um, LeBron James in the 2013 finals game 7. Where
Mhm.
would you put this moment against those?
So, listening to that question, I'll be honest with you. I have to give my moment based off of for me and what it means to
Yeah.
me. All those moments were pivotal moments in championship runs and the big three and Miami Heat. That's embedded in the Heat history. But for me personally, it was one of the greatest moments I've ever seen with my own eyes. I wasn't there at the Kobe game. Obviously, I wasn't there at the Wilt Chamberlain's game. And I've seen other people get close, you know what I mean? But for me personally, to experience that type of record breaking historical moment, for me, that was top. That for me was a hell of a moment. And to be able to not only share it with him uh, during the moment, to also be able to speak with him afterwards and just, man, like, how does that feel? Be able to sit and talk to this guy knowing, like, man, I know you just, you understand what just happened. It was just a surreal moment. And so for me, that's just something that I can't compare to moments that I only watched on television. And it's not, again, those were
Yeah.
great moments in Heat history. Those will never be forgotten. Those are always, they're plastered all over the Miami Heat locker room, and you're going to have constant reminders of those moments. But I've also got to say that you're going to also have to put that 83-point game up there as well because uh, he's a part of history.
He is. Maybe his pictures, or maybe even your pictures, will be on the Heat locker room walls soon.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
um,
Of course.
yeah, exactly. So, listen as well. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. I'm looking forward to the rest of the regular season. I know it's playoffs are coming up soon, and hopefully playoff bound for you lot as well. But we'll of course be keeping up with your content online and throughout the off season, and hopefully the postseason as well. Please pass my congratulations on to Bam and best wishes for the remainder of the 2025-2026 season. And what's that 3 words you said earlier? Wilt, Bam,
Uh,
and Kobe?
Will,
Exactly.
Bam, and Kobe. It is what it
Exactly.
is.
All 83-point jersey, baby. All the best, and thank you so much again.